Welcome to Provocative Conversations from Twice 5 Miles Radio. I'm your host, James Navé. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. Today, I have a returning guest. Her name is Laura Hope-Gill. Laura has just been promoted to full professorship at Lenore Ryan College in the writing program, which she founded many years ago. Laura has been active in the Asheville writing community for decades. She's also recognized around the country as a poet, a writer, an essayist, as well as a provocative, intriguing teacher. So in the spirit of congratulations to celebrate Laura's new position at Lenore Ryan College as a full professor, I've invited her to be on the show. So we begin by me asking her why teaching has such a significant role in her life. And here's what she says.
I teach creativity. That's the heart. Poetry came into my life immediately. I don't remember a time really when it wasn't there. My mother tells me that before I knew how to spell and write, I would come up with little songs and poems and ask her to write down this impression that I had. And that's 2 years old, 3 years old. And poetry was there. It wasn't something I learned. It wasn't something somebody told me about. The uniqueness of the experience was so pure that even when I was being taught poetry in high school or in middle school, I didn't connect what I was doing with what we were reading because of the way it was talked about, because of the way it was taught. They had me counting lines. They had me writing ABBA, CDDC, EFFEGG to a sonnet that was written about the most important things in life. They're telling me that it's iambic pentameter and not noticing where it is an iambic pentameter, which is how John Donne and Sidney and Spenser and Shakespeare, they'll invert a foot. They'll break the pattern. They'll defy their own rules when they want to show us, you have to keep an eye out for when the pattern breaks. They didn't talk about that stuff. I learned more about poetry, its true nature, in my physics classroom, which had a poster of the quantum things, 1p1 electron shells. How many electrons are in the shell? And you get this many electrons, and then you add another bunch, and boom, it changes the entire identity of the thing. And so I was like, okay, levels. Life is about levels. And what are we going to fill those levels with? We're going to fill them with love. We're going to fill them with energy. We're going to fill them with passion, because the more levels we can fill, the closer we get to something called a quantum leap. That explained what John Keats was doing. That explained why Percy Shelley's standing in the middle of a thunderstorm, holding up God knows what, asking the storm to carry his words out into the world. These three friends getting together at a castle, and they choose to write terrifying things in the night. Okay, those were the lessons. Those were the teachings about how do we move from being one state to another. None of this was talked about in English class. There were multiple choice questions on a quiz, maybe an essay question. It had to be 5 paragraphs and had to fit the mold. Poetry is everything to me. There's nothing outside of it. And when I'm teaching, I have a responsibility to these people that I teach to show them that there's an entirely other neural network that was basically made illegal in 1690 when John Locke published a doctrine of empiricism. Wait, why does science get to suddenly make doctrines which have been the work of the church for that long? And why the hell did the church get to make doctrines about something that is about creativity? And I have, the Holy Bible is a druidic text that got cut up and rearranged. And every book that I read on druids begins basically with the same sentence. The druids left no writings behind. These are people that held sway for 850 years. And it's all grounded in storytelling and writing. And you're going to tell me they didn't leave anything behind. When I get students, they have come to my classroom feeling lately that they need to write. It's time for me to tell my story. I teach doctors in a narrative medicine program. They came after the pandemic telling me that they had watched hundreds of members of their community die, people that they grew up with, people that taught them in school. They don't know what to do with the grief. They're disconnecting from family. They're disconnecting from things that they love. Anhedonia and an inability to feel pleasure is a common term that applies at this time in history as quantum physics and spirituality are closer and closer and closer. Medical science is proving that writing poetry actually heals us as well, if not better than pharmaceuticals. So we're kind of here at the tail end. We're the last people at the science party. And at first, the drugs were fun. At first, it was cool. But now we've realized what they've done to us and that we're removed from each other. So we're dealing now with these survivors of this horrendous period of time of 300 years of living without metaphor. And without metaphor, we die. We're not only matter. And the scientific revolution was all about proving to us that we're only matter and only matter matters. And the scientists are so proud of themselves because, like, well, if you can measure it, you can prove it. The really good stuff doesn't do numbers. And I actually like watching the scientists try to make sense of the quantum field because it belongs to us. And it has always belonged to the poets. They can have the numbers. They can measure the living daylights out of whatever they want to measure. But I love it. They start finding out about quantum physics. It's like time moves in two different directions and we're not sure how. Recently, there was one that was lead turned into gold for a fraction of a second, and we don't understand why. They're never going to understand it because they keep throwing numbers at it, and the quantum field is the heart. And it's like, okay, you want to play? Here, let me show you that time moves in two directions. We've been colonized. We've been colonized by science. And we have an operating system we've been told is the only one that's available. And when students come to me with this inkling of a feeling that they need something to say, there's that painting on the Sistine Chapel where Adam is lounging on a rock and he's got his hand open on his knee and he's all alone on his little rock. He's isolated. And then along comes this heart. Michelangelo has painted this image of God and a whole bunch of other people in a heart. And he was like stealing cadavers and cutting them open. So he knew what a heart was. And you can see the aorta, you can see the vena cava, and it's a party cloud. It's like all these people are in there with God. And Adam are on his empirical rock all alone. And then along comes this part of us where we are hearing music all the time. This part of us where we feel spacious and free and happy. Now we have polyvagal theory coming from the counseling world, which is called the second brain, right? It's called the second brain, and it is a part of the parasympathetic nervous system is actually called the social nervous system, and it's where language is. So when we're all stressed, when we're wounded, when we're hurt, and we feel the urge to write, we are shifting from isolation into community. And as a teacher, my job is to say, the door is open and you're welcome here. And I don't use any critique in my workshops. We never say anything negative at all. And poet after poet after poet comes through. Even people that come in, I have this one student, she's a surgeon, a world-class surgeon. She's on the NASA bioethics committee for the mission to Mars. She's got her MBA, she's got her MD, got her doctorate in engineering from MIT. And she came to my program for narrative medicine, saying she wanted to teach it to her surgical fellows now that she's emerita. And she said, I'll do anything, but I'm not going to write a poem. Don't even ask me. If I have to take a class in it, I'm going to skip it. And you understand me? I'm like, I understand you. She wrote her final thesis going through her notebooks of her surgeries and her cases, stories of baptizing a stillborn baby alone in a hospital at night and not knowing if she was allowed to do that or not, but not being okay with not doing it and not even knowing if she believed in God. So this human side of all these surgeries came up. She called the book Care for the Wounded. And she's publishing her poetry and she's teaching with me for free now for like 5 years since she got her MFA. So that's why I teach.
You were talking about the 300 years of science influencing the way you and I and the rest of the people that we know think. You also said that is changing. AI is here, political disruptions are here, 8 billion people are here trying to figure out what to do. And in all of this, you talk of teaching, and yet as you speak, I am seeing you as much of a guide as a teacher. Can you speak to that disruption and how, as a guide slash teacher, you're interacting with all of these folks who come through? Do you see them as students? Are they hybrid collaborators? What are these poets, and how do you view your relationship with them?
I'm showing them that they can heal. And they didn't know they could. They were told that poetry was this silly thing that doesn't matter. The way that we were taught in school made that very clear. School should have been taught as, okay, now we're in a science classroom and we're going to create hypotheses and we're going to create experiments with which to test those hypotheses. And then we're going to analyze the data and then we're going to draw conclusions. Then you go over to English class, and this is how it should have been. Now we're going to learn how to do the creative process, which is the other half of the scientific method. In the creative process, we feel something that is uncomfortable, and we're going to put it down on paper, and we're going to see what our creative imagination does with it. And then we're going to share it with each other. When you hear somebody else's piece that speaks to you, then you share your piece. And then somebody will feel akin to what you read, and then they will go. And we're going to inhabit this space that is nonlinear, because as you go through life, you're going to have to use both. There will be times when you need to be able to analyze a problem. Money is draining from your bank account faster than you're happy with. Analyze your freaking bank account and look at all the subscriptions that are stealing from you. There will be times when analysis will not do anything for you. Something will happen that will be so shattering that it will take associative logic to move you out of it. When you're writing creatively, the universe is going to notice. And when you write something, it's going to make something happen that speaks to that. And once you notice that, you'll know you're not alone. You have a guide. And everybody up until the 1700s knew this, knew we had a guide. Rumi calls it his little friend. John in the Bible calls it the Christ. Marcus Aurelius calls it the Logos. Sharon Olds mentions it. She says, it rides in on her own words, and we all do this. We don't talk about it. We have this linguistic guide. My job teaching my students is to get them to notice this. And I have 18 students, and a lot of them were counseling students who had never written before for pleasure, or they had, but as we're sort of encouraged to do, we drop it in order to take life seriously. The first week, they had to write a little reflection on something that they were troubled by. And they all wrote about 800 words, which is what I request, at least 800 words. And then when class got together, I had them paste, it's all in Zoom, had them paste their final paragraphs in the chat. And then we compared them, and they were all positive. So they would start in these places of great discomfort and loss, and emotional pain. But the writing always, always guides us to a new way of looking at it, sometimes a solution, sometimes just a beautiful way of grieving what's lost with a little promise that I'm going to live through this. That's all I have to do, really. And they're like, wait, what was that? And I'm like, that's nature. That's natural intelligence. And Percy Bysshe Shelley talks about it in the Defense of Poetry. He says that's what we're going to lose if we go all in on science. And he also calls it the poetical principle. And I get students thinking with their natural intelligence again, and they get happier, they get healthier. One student went off the Dilaudid pump, which is an opium pump in your body. And when she started writing, she told her doctor she wanted to get off it. No one had ever asked for one to be removed. And so they had to gather a surgical team from different hospitals to figure out, how do we take out the pain bug? And she was basically in a wheelchair when she started and on this Dilaudid. And now she's written 3 books. She's running workshops. She started a creative nonfiction class with memoir. And she couldn't write in first person. There was no first person when she went to write about herself. She wrote about a man in Louisiana, a Black man who was not wealthy and would make turtle soup out of turtles. That was who she wanted to write about. And she asked me, she had a very successful career as a journalist. She had language in a way in her life. She goes, why can't I write about myself if I'm writing these memoir? Is it memoir if I'm not writing about myself? The man that she was writing about, she figured out, was the father of the family's housekeeper, who would find this woman as a young girl after being beaten up by her brothers and worse. And they would leave her in a closet, and the housekeeper would look for her and find her and clean her wounds and give her hot milk and change her clothes in time for when everybody sat down for dinner. Once she started to allow that character to speak, she could speak. And she traveled back to Louisiana. She got all her family members together because they never talked about it. And she'd never talked about it. She'd forgotten it. And she told the truth, and she got them to acknowledge it. And she got to thank the housekeeper in her retirement home before she died. So I just say, there's a story inside you, and you have no idea what it is. And once you open it, you have no idea where it's going to take you. And then she and this other student who was 78 when he joined my program, and 82 when he graduated, and 86 when he passed away recently. He was depressed when he came in. He and his wife were having to sell their home and move into a retirement community. She was having dementia symptoms, so he was watching the end of his married life. And he wanted to write a book about the new Jim Crow because he was a successful engineer, a CEO of a multinational company. And he was furious that he didn't know what was going on with prison labor. And he wanted to write a book that set the record straight. I was like, okay. And he signed up for a creative nonfiction class. I asked the students to compare ancient classical storytelling and new Salman Rushdie short story or something. Talk about the elements of real and the elements of non-real. He wrote a chart. He handed in a spreadsheet. And I was like, yeah, you can't do that here. You can't do that. You have to sentences, like complete thoughts. He's like, okay. Then he discovered the Romantic poets, Navé. And they came to me with Ode on Melancholy. And he said, can we sit together and read this? I'm like, yeah, we can. And he goes, he's sad. And I was like, yeah, he's sad. He goes, but he's not seeing it as a bad thing. I'm like, no, he's not seeing it as a bad thing. He's seeing it as a part of his life, as a part of who he is as a person. He said, I'm sad. I'm very sad. Will poetry help me? I said, yeah, it will. And it was not long until he sent me a text message saying, damn you. And I texted back, like, what? I mean, like, I was at the grocery store and I had a full cart, and I'm just the next person in line, and a poem started in my head. And I couldn't stand there any longer. I abandoned the cart and I went to my car so I could write it down. Damn you. And that was the beginning. And he continued to study poetry and write poetry. He and the other woman that I told you about, they both went off their blood pressure medication, not because I told them to, but their doctor said, you seem to be doing fine without it. This student, John, he had been suicidal. And during the pandemic, he'd graduated, but he said, I want to publish a book of my poems. And I was like, okay. So I worked with him on that. And then he started to book himself on cruises with like there's a literary cruise between New York and London or something, and it's poet laureates. Booked himself a trip on one of those with the week in the West End Theatre District. After that, he booked a trip on the Trans Canada Railway, and he bought a whole new Land's End wardrobe for it, like turtlenecks and flannel shirts, and he rode in the observation car and wrote poems about the stars. And he died from a hiking accident. It's like and then it was after our last lunch, we would meet for lunch. He said that poetry saved his life, and he credited me with saving his life. And I was like, yeah, it's poetry. And so when people tune in and they just begin to welcome their natural intelligence, this part of us, this little friend that we have, they get happier, they get healthier, their relationships get better, and they thank me. And I just said, write something.
I want to build on a thought that you offered a moment ago. You started out this conversation by saying, well, I don't teach writing, I teach creativity. Then you came through a bit and you said, it's the creative process, the methodology that I'm teaching. So can you parse a bit between creativity as a state and the process that you help people through, and how to take full advantage of this birthright?
So my relationship with poetry is my relationship with the divine. There's zero. I think that Jesus is intuition. Intuition is creativity. Hearing the voice of God is about being able to communicate to that deeper self and our day-to-day selves bumping around in the world without much of an idea of what's going on. But if we can tune into that deeper self, which could be Jesus, which could be the Logos, could be Moses, I have been shown in my own journey, because I was so committed to it, like you, we just like, this is it. This is what I want to believe and this is what I want to do. And there's nothing as valuable as this to me. So it has shown me things. And when I lived far out west alone in my cabin by the sea in Squim, which was hit by these floods recently, I was alone. I taught in the mornings, 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, and the rest of the time alone in nature. And no one had ever told me about mysticism. I was raised an Episcopalian, plaid, wool, pearls twice a year, and you're good. Not much conversation about anything exciting. Sitting out there by myself, stuff started to come up, right? I felt my own soul rise. And like that heart in the Michelangelo painting, it was filled with voices. It was filled with aspects of myself. It was filled with aspects of something that wasn't myself. And it was holding me. And the more I gave to the page, I was given dreams. And the dreams were often teachings. It would often be me reading entirely humongous books. And at the edges of the books were little fingers holding it open. And at the bottom of the book, there were little toes underneath, like something was saying, read this, read this, read this. It was words. And I didn't understand what it was. I saw a word in the clouds. I wrote it down on a napkin. It's like, is this happening? Is this okay? And when I would doubt it, my heart would break because it drove me to ask this very critical question. Who are you going to believe? Anything from Western culture ever told you anything that has been helpful? No. Well, then there must be something else that you are experiencing. And then later, I went through a horrific trauma. I couldn't escape from it. I could not heal it. I was writing, I was thinking, I was trying to be as clever as possible, but the trauma wouldn't move. In the course of 1 week, first, a colleague asked me to pick up some books for him at the campus bookshop, and it was The Alchemist. And there was an extra one. He goes, why don't you just keep that? So I read that and I was like, that's how I experienced the world. So I got interested in alchemy. And the next night I went out, and it was new for me to go out. But there was a fringe event and I wanted to see it. And a woman did a performance piece about alchemy. And I was like, oh, something's happening here. And I had asked the psychotherapist, who I'd been working with for over a decade at that point, it's like, there has to be something that we could be exploring, that you could lose your license for teaching me. I know you're holding back. What have you got? And he brought in Jung's alchemical studies. And I was like, okay, let's go. Alchemy is the creative process. That is a form of reasoning in which we welcome a third part, and we don't know what that third part is going to be. And in writing a sonnet, you begin with, oh, this struck, I hurt, or, oh, I'm confused and I don't know what to do, or I don't have any friends. You start off with me, right? And then you say a little bit more about yourself, which requires vulnerability. Like the first one can be angry, right? But then 8 lines, you're going to have to be a little bit open. Once we've named it, once we've named the pain, when in disgrace, with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state. You get to a turn, right? Like there's the turn in the poem. And that's where some other way of seeing it comes into play. Then I remember you and I think of you. And then I wouldn't trade my state with kings. With Petrarch, he would be lamenting his love for Laura, which I love, and say a little bit more about it. And then he would have an insight. And that volta, right? That volta is where we're open to something else helping us along. And then in the final, tie it all together. That's creative reasoning, where it isn't just, I hurt, I want to kill somebody, it's not just bam bam logic, which we have in the White House at this moment. And we also have like bam bam logic all over the place with social media, because social media doesn't allow us to do that third part. This is what I think. And then somebody else like, well, this is what I think. Like, well, I hate you. Well, I hate you. Boom, done. And I think this is why Shakespeare did what he did. I think he knew that we were about to lose creative reasoning. He saw the writing on the wall. He saw that a very toxic kind of masculinity was coming into play. One that didn't feel, one that just wanted to win. And this is why we get Macduff. After his family's been killed, his soldiers say, fight like a man. Macduff says, first I must feel it. And that's kind of like lights out for reasonable men in the West. That was it. Macduff went, and it's why we have the soliloquies, right? We're going to show everybody in the Globe Theater how to think through something, to be or not to be, right? Let's ponder this. Let's explore this. We need that now more than ever. And that's what alchemy is. The church even outlawed it. And we were told that it was about turning metals into gold, and people started trying to do that, but it was never about that. Alchemy was about knowing that we're head and we're heart, and that where we say heart, We're talking something metaphysical, not physical. Poets wrote about this.
I have something to track here because of what you've been saying. I would like for you to reflect on the idea of what we do as poets and in our practice of alchemy, and how the environments around us influence and inform that. And it can be any environment. So all environments have validity. I don't have to go to the mountain cabin and commune with the migrating warblers in the springtime. Reflect on how we as creatives can value and take advantage or have a communal relationship with what's around us wherever we are.
There's a book out by a woman named Laura Marks at Duke University called The Fold, like From Your Body to the Cosmos. And she's a philosopher and applied physicist. Her book is about how now that we know that there's no such thing as reality, that the universe is ceaselessly folding and unfolding in on itself. And we too are folding and unfolding in on ourselves. And I see this with my students, like they'll be 8 weeks in on a wonderful ride of creativity. They'll say, "Can I talk to you?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And one of them was this doctor. He was aware he didn't like who he was anymore, medical director of multiple things. And he called me one day. He had taken 3 days off work because his favorite musical, The Wiz, was playing in Charlotte. There was a NASCAR race, and he loved racing. And then there was a third thing that he loved, and it was happening in Charlotte too. And there were these three things. Whenever there's three, you know you're in a story, you know it's happening. And he was reading Care of the Soul, and it was really having an effect on him. And I couldn't talk to him on the phone because I was in the middle of something. But I said, "Go do those things and write about it." And he did. And now he has a circle of doctors that he hangs out with creatively. He's built a grotto in his backyard. And he's returned to making films and buying video equipment and playing the guitar. And all these doctors come over, and it's like Dead Poet Society in the cave. And these doctors are all embracing their souls again. So the material world started to welcome him because he started to tune into his heart. The students will ask, and I'll say, there's a lot I can't put in the marketing material. Trust it, and it's going to be okay. In my own experience, well, I saw it when I was out west. Nature just put on an amazing show for me. Like, "Hey, check this out." And it would tell me what blackberries to pick from a blackberry bush. And if I made the decision intentionally, the blackberry would be sour. But when I let it choose the blackberry and intuitively move my hand under it, it would be sweet. It wasn't until the brain injury. I had a severe brain injury in 2022, November 2nd. It was a dog feeding accident in my kitchen where they say the accidents happen. And I landed on the back of my skull, and I disabled something called the occipital lobe. And the occipital lobe is what receives stimuli from the world. And if it thinks it's true, if it thinks it's real, it kicks the stimulus up into the reality part of the brain. And if what is occurring is not a part of the paradigm, Navé, it silences it. So mine broke. And I could not think. This particular brain injury didn't allow me to have any cognition. I couldn't do any thought. I had to write on my fridge whiteboard, "You have a brain injury. You can't think." I had to block out all the light from my house, including unscrewing the light bulb from the fridge, covering all little digital devices. Like the smallest light would cause me intense, intense pain. That was 7 months without a self, 7 months without an ego, 7 months with one of 5 senses remaining. I'm deaf, and there suddenly I was blind, and I also couldn't smell, and without smell you can't taste. So total sensory deprivation. And inside that, Inside that, there was a voice. I needed everything to be that silent to be able to hear it. You're in here, aren't you? And it was like, I am. And then it started singing The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I said, are we singing that because I am the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald? And it said, yes, you are the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And it didn't mean it in a sarcastic way. It was telling me it knew what was going on. And in that space, it moved me around my house in a way that was farthest from the sun. And in the evening, it would let me sit in my living room where there was a little bit more light during the day, but at night it was safe. It was a guardian. After about 6 months, I gave up. I decided I was going to be blind forever. I gave up on the idea of any kind of improvement or healing. I was like, I need to get used to this. And so I told it, I said, I'm going to be okay. I'll just live blind. And I stopped taking off my sleep mask and I wore it all the time. And 2 weeks after making that decision and relaxing into that, I woke up in the morning one day and could see everything. Sunlight, I could see my dog, I could see my hand when I moved in front of my face, and that mask was still on. The sleep mask was on. Intuition had taken over completely, and I had come to trust it completely in that time because I had no choice. It was the only thing in there. After that, I started to get better. And since then, it's insane how in tune with me. Like I will have a thought of, oh, where's that hair clip I like? And then, oh, there's that hair clip I like. I was doing some home repair and I had mismeasured a length of quarter round that I needed. And at Lowe's, I had bought a 6-foot thing of quarter round. And then somebody bumped into me as I was checking out and knocked a foot of the quarter round off. And I was like, oh, damn it. But what I needed was 5 feet. And the exact length that had been cut off was 1 foot and it fit perfectly. This is constant. Thing that I need is always close at hand. The solution is always something that is on the corner of a piece of paper sticking out from something else. And so this kind of poetic reasoning is about moving, is about being, imagination to such a degree that you're imagining the world as you live it. How's that? Wild.
I think this is incredible. And I have one more observation or question to help us move into the last bit of time we have, which is not too much more. Here's my frame for you. You're describing all of these experiences. I've known you a long time. I know these happened to you. This is not new in a sense because this is your report from the field. Certainly new when you have different experiences that you haven't experienced before. So there are people out there listening to this. I work with people who like to write. I work with adults. They show up. They aren't sure exactly why they're there. You've given us some good reasons to explain why people show up for these things. But a lot of people don't feel like they belong. They don't feel like they're a member of the club. They feel like they have to do something to be initiated. And yet we know that's not true. Can you say some words to the folks who are feeling that way to give them a sense of guidance and a sense of how they can instantly belong in this environment without any application at all? Nobody's there guarding this gate.
Yep. A simple exercise. I call it the magnum opus. And you can do this anytime, anywhere. Write down 7 objects. It's like a hat, a teacup, clock, cloud, river, things that are. And then pick one and write it at the top of a page and write how it started. Make it up. If it's a light bulb, how did it begin? How did it start? Or you could do heat it up. That's one that I also use. And the second one, put it in water. The third one, take it apart. The fourth one, connect it to something. The fifth one, destroy it utterly. The sixth one, leave it alone. And the seventh one, bring it to life. This is the alchemical process. You saw me. I did it like 20 years ago at an event where you and I were doing something at the Hawk and Ivy, right? And everybody did it, like 150 people there, and suddenly everyone's writing. So this is a wonderful way to just show ourselves that it's going on all the time. It's not something that we grow good at. It's something that we're good at always. And it's always excellent. And it's always beautiful. And all we need to do to get to it is to come up with an object and do something with it. And this takes down the wall entirely. People that do this exercise are like, what just happened? I do 5-minute writing stints. It's like, write for 5 minutes, put it in water. You have 5 minutes. So they essentially are writing 7 poems in 35 minutes when they've never written a poem in their life. That's a wonderful way to just show people that this isn't something you're bad at. This isn't something, poetry was never, ever meant to be put so high on a shelf. And it certainly was never meant to be counted or approached like math. Those romantic poets, they were getting high on the language. That's why it's so intense and flowery, because when we are riding high on creative imagination, we are dosing ourselves with oxytocin. We are reducing inflammation. We are overcoming loneliness, and we are destroying anxiety. Because once you've done this a few times, there's a reason they called it becoming like gods. And when you're able to do this, when you're able to just step outside of the doldrums of the daily, 5 minutes, whew, it's like sticking your head out an airplane window and getting sucked out and then put back in again. You just feel like there's more. There's more to you. Everybody got you wrong. You're curious about yourself. And soon that curiosity turns to love and appreciation for your own story and for the way your mind works.
Laura Hope-Gill, thank you so much for all of these reflections. I wish we had 12 more hours to go. We don't. So
I'll come back.
Just thank you so much.
You're welcome. I have a Substack where I write about this almost every day. And Laura Hope-Gill, that's me. And also it's on my website, laurahopegill.com. I have the science behind this stuff. But yeah, thank you, Navé. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. And I hope those of you who are listening will go to Laura's website and check it out. I've known Laura a long time, and I hope to continue the tradition for some time to come. So
Fantastic.
I embrace you so much. Thank you, Laura.
Same. Thank you.
And there you go, my friends. Thus concludes my conversation with Laura Hope-Gill. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Every time I talk to Laura, I learned so much more about the poetics of things, and especially the way she thinks. I've always appreciated that about her, and she's never failed to give me something to think about every time I've encountered her and talked with her, spent some time with her. And today was really no different. Laura mentioned her accident. She mentioned she fell, which caused a brain injury. She wrote a poem about it. I didn't have room to put the poem in the conversation, but I do have room to add it now. So here's the poem that Laura offered as a reflection on what happened to her when she had her brain injury.
Rightness. I had this experience. I was somebody else at the time, someone I no longer talk like, act like, think like. I feel the same. Love is the same. Trust is the same. Fear is also the same. Terror is the same. I was pushed off the cliff of myself. I fell for a while as the cliff I had been changed with every inch I fell. I fell away from the me that was falling as I fell. I went somewhere. I had to let go. I went far away to witness something close up. I had to be blind to see because it was brightness, and you can't see this in daylight. It was so bright. I kept checking to see if my eyes were closed because it didn't make sense and they were closed. I understood everything after that about the darkness and the light, about how much of one you have to fill with before you find the other deep inside it. I saw something without seeing and was astonished and smiled and laughed in amazement. My relationship with light is different. It isn't what it was. I can almost open my eyes and not see again.
That's a terrific last line, don't you think? I could almost open my eyes and not see again. Seeing, what does it mean to be able to see? When you see poetically, it means that you are allowing yourself to embrace the great potential that you have for appreciating beauty. I've quoted this quote before from Charles Wright. I'll say it again. All beauty begins with disappearance, the bitten edges of things, the gradual sliding away into tissue and memory, the uncertainty and dazzling impermanence of days we beg our meanings from, and their frayed loveliness. All beauty indeed does begin with disappearance, and beauty, in a sense, requires seeing. And yet, when you close your eyes and you feel the tabletop around you, you will get imagery that you seem to see coming from your imagination does not require your eyes to see it. You will get that imagery, and that imagery is another kind of seeing. When I'm talking with someone, say if you and I were at a cafe and you explained something that you were doing in your life that was very complicated, I might say to you, I see what that means. So I love what Laura's talking about when she's trying to give a sense through her poetry, through that great poem, how seeing can be translated in many different ways, or denying yourself the opportunity for light and yet having another kind of illumination, the illumination of a dream. If you've ever had a dream and you've enjoyed the visualness of it, it seems like you're seeing, even though the dream is happening with your eyes closed. And in a sense, when we write poetry, we are trying to see inside our imaginations, to invite our imaginations to see something with us, to come up with imagery that might seem a little bit different to those first reading it because it's a different way of quote unquote looking at the world. And so there are a lot of ways of looking at the world. I'm airing this show the weekend before Christmas. How do you see things in the holiday season, during the Christmas season? Well, we see things very different 12 months out of the year, and the Christmas season is no exception, really. That said, from the point of view of poetry, we can do a bit with the Christmas season around poems. So what I'd like to do now is shift the vibe just a little bit, and I'd like to read a poem for you that you have known for many years. It's titled A Visit from St. Nicholas. It's by Clement Clark Moore. And when I begin it, you will know exactly what it is because, like I said, you've heard it plenty of times before. It's full of imagery, it's full of visuals, it's full of things that you may or may not have ever seen. And yet, in your mind, you see it all the time. So here we go. This is a Christmas poem that you know very well. I bet you may have already guessed it. 1, 2, 3. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap, when out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below. And what to my wondering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment he must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop, the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose was like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed. It's like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. And that was a visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Clarke Moore, often known as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. A poetic reflection of the imagery we all have in our head, Santa Claus coming across the meadow. I am recording this in Manila, in the Philippines right now. The days are always hot. There has never, ever been a flake of snow in Manila. And yet, when I go out into the city and go to the shops to go shopping, guess what you hear? You hear Christmas music. Guess what I hear? I hear Christmas music. And I hear Christmas music. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. Really interesting. So the sense of Christmas, the sense of Santa coming, the sense of us being good to ourselves, the sense of us doing something poetic that has beauty and meaning, the idea of you giving a gift to me or me giving a gift to you has great meaning, has great significance, more than just the object that one hands to another. So in this holiday season, Christmas season, so during this holiday season and however you celebrate it, I'm sure you can lean into it wherever you are in the world. When you give something, that's a poetic sense of things. A gift is a poetic sense of things. We are all poetically inclined when you think about it. All beauty does begin with disappearance, the bits and edges of things, the gradual sliding away into tissue and memory, the uncertainty and dazzling impermanence of days we beg our meanings from, and their frayed loveliness. And the loveliness of December 2025 will pass, and we'll move on into the next year, and 2026 will arrive, And who knows what awaits us around the corner? We never know that. And yet we know something's around the corner and it's always waiting. And if we keep moving forward with our eyes open, we'll see more than we could possibly imagine. And on that note, thank you ever so much for tuning in to Provocative Conversations from Twice 5 Miles Radio. I'm your host, James Navé. This show airs every weekend on WPVM FM in Asheville and KCEI Cultural Energy Radio in Taos. Thank you to Devine Dial for managing WPVM FM, and Robin Collier and Mike Tilley for doing the same in Taos, New Mexico. Thank you, Walter Parks, for our theme song, walterparks.com for more on Walter's music. Devine Dial, thank you for managing WPVM FM in Asheville. Robin Collier and Mike Tilley, thank you for managing KCEI Cultural Energy Radio in Taos, New Mexico. If you'd like to reach me, Navé at jamesnavé.com. I'd love to hear from you. I get very few emails from folks saying hello to me, telling me what they think. I'd love to know. Once in a while I do. If I ask for them, I get them. So if you would, I would appreciate it if you send me an email and tell me what you think about the show. Tell me what you're thinking about your life, what's going on in your world. And with that, thanks ever so much for listening to the show, and I hope you'll come back sometime soon. And until then, have a happy holiday wherever you are in the world. And if I'm lucky, maybe, just maybe, I'll catch you on that turnaround somewhere down the line.